Next up is Mindi Schultz. She is the daughter of Tom and Vicki Schultz, longtime relayers. I know them very well. They're the ones that got me started in this. Tom, Vicki, I want to say thanks. Mindi is a graduate of White Bear Lake High School and St. Cloud State. Mindi is married to her husband, Daryl, and they have 2 beautiful daughters. Mindi?
All right. Well, good evening. As Dave said, I am blessed to be the daughter of Vicki Schultz and 10-year cancer survivor Tom Schultz, and I'm honored to have been asked to speak to you tonight. I want to start out with a story about how much this relay has meant to my family over the years. As Dave said, my parents have been a part of the White Bear Lake Relay for Life for as long as I can remember. 11 years ago, my dad, mom, brother, and I stood at the edge by the campsite, waiting for the beautiful pool of purple to pass us by. As we waited, I remember having a conversation with my dad about how just fortunate we had been. I had an uncle pass away from cancer before I was born, but other than that, cancer hadn't really been a part of our lives outside of extended family. We were talking about how incredibly blessed we were because that seemed to be so rare. Now, fast forward a year, so now 10 years ago, my mom, brother, and myself came to the relay at about 10:30 p.m., where my mom was presented with a purple survivor t-shirt for my father, who laid in a hospital bed in a room at St. John's recovering from surgery that very day. I'd like to share with you his story from the vantage point of me, his daughter. My dad had had high blood pressure for as long as I can remember, and after one of his regular doctor's appointments, it was suggested that he have an ultrasound done to see if his kidneys could be acting up as a part of the problem. He had the ultrasound done, and at a follow-up appointment, was told that one of his kidneys was basically just one big mass. He was also told that 99.99% of that time, a mass like that in the kidney is cancer. I was 7 months pregnant and on some limited bed rest when I got the call. Min, your dad has kidney cancer. As I mentioned, cancer had never been a reality in my life personally before. So what I heard when I got that call was, Min, your dad is going to die. I was petrified, to say the least. I was about to have his second grandchild, and his first granddaughter was only 2.5 years old. They needed to know him, and I needed his guidance. Now, this is the part of the story where if you're an oncologist, a doctor, a nurse, anyone in the medical field, you're probably going to want to plug your ears, because I went to Google. And I'm pretty sure I read every website possible about kidney cancer. I researched and put together a huge portfolio of information for my dad and family. Looking back at that now, I realize I felt helpless and I couldn't let my emotions out. So instead, I went into a more logical mode. And in my research, what I wanted most of all was to find the site that would say, your dad will be okay. He had a follow-up CAT scan to evaluate the cancer before his surgery to remove his kidney. Thankfully, that scan, everything looked fine, but the doctor did see something very small at the bottom and suggested a colonoscopy to just check it out. He was found to have a large mass at the bottom of his colon that shut off about 3/4 of the opening. But the good news was that the small biopsy that they took came back cancer-free. He would, however, have to have one kidney removed and now a large portion of his colon. 1 month after his second granddaughter, Grace, was born, my dad went in for surgery. My mom, brother, dad, and I got to the hospital nice and early so he could be admitted. I remember them calling his name and watching him walk down the hall, alone, to get into his gown and get prepped before we could see him. I remember how awful it felt. He was the one that always comforted us during these times. Now he was the one walking down the hall alone, preparing for a life-saving surgery. I remember sitting in the waiting room, surrounded by family and friends, just waiting. I remember the doctor coming in after his kidney was removed, letting us know that the surgery was successful. I remember the second doctor coming in after part of his colon was removed and telling us that it too was a successful surgery. And I remember his doctor telling us that miraculously His kidney was not cancer. He was the 0.01% that wasn't cancer. But then I also remember hearing that his colon mass was. Our heads were spinning as we absorbed the good and bad information. I remember thinking that my dad was still in recovery and had no clue what was going on just yet. We also had learned that his colon cancer had spread to enough lymph nodes to require chemotherapy. This cancer thing just got real. I went in to see him after surgery, feeling emotional and wanting to just hug him and tell him how much I love him. As his eyes fluttered open, he began to speak, and I was thrilled. He said to me, "Hey, Min, do you think they could put some coffee in my IV?" And he smiled. For those of you that know my dad, coffee is his lifeline, and humor is his calming force. So I just knew and laughed, and I knew that he was okay. My dad got a port put in, and we all attended a chemo class with him, where we would learn about chemotherapy and tour the facility. I was so nervous. How would it look? How would it feel? I can tell you that I have never been anywhere else where I have felt such hope. Yeah, people were sick, some more than others, but I saw love. I saw hope. I saw people that were sharing similar experiences and making the most of it. I saw nurses give such incredible care and doctors pay attention to detail and making sure that all was understood. I saw beauty in a dark place, and it eased my heart. Before my dad was to begin chemo, he had to have one more scan done to assess once again the magnitude of his cancer. He had a PET scan done, and at our meeting with his oncologist prior to him starting his chemo, we were told that the cancer had also spread to a small spot in his liver. Another drug was added to his list that would pinpoint that specific cancer in that specific location. My dad would go to chemo once every 2 weeks for about 3 hours, and he would also wear a chemo pack home that would inject chemo into him continuously for 3 days. Now, I want to pause for a moment in his story because 2 things saved his life. The PET scan was fairly new, or at least it had finally become more widely available at this time, and without it, that spot on my dad's liver would not have been found. And the drug that they gave him to address this new spot in his liver, that was also new. And without that drug, the spot in his liver probably would have spread. What you do, what we do here tonight, it makes a difference. It helps to fund research, technology, and drugs. And my dad is living proof of that. After roughly 8 treatments of intense chemotherapy, he was done. Scans came back clean and free. My dad had done it. But as many of you know, the journey keeps going. You have PET scans, blood tests, and other scans to see if there is still no evidence of disease. After about roughly 1 year of having no evidence of disease, the original spot in my dad's liver reared its ugly head once again. Not long after, my dad had over 80% of his liver removed. I didn't even know that that was possible. His kidney, he had 2 of. His colon, he had only a partial portion removed. But a liver, I had no idea that it could regenerate itself. I am happy to say that he has been cancer-free ever since. Woo! I personally, as a daughter, learned a great deal being a witness and a partner on my dad's cancer journey. I learned how strong he is physically, enduring more chemo than was even expected due to the extreme side effects. How he would do whatever it would take to heal from his many surgeries, and how he was willing to take on whatever they would throw at him to beat his cancer. I learned how strong he is emotionally, that hope never left his mindset, and that remaining optimistic and positive during a time where that can be a huge challenge is of the utmost importance. And I learned what a strong man of faith my dad is. I watched him grow in his faith during a time where I often felt angry at God. And I'm sure he had his days. How could he not? But his faith in God and his relationship with him only grew stronger. And most importantly, I learned that everybody has a story. As I look out into the beautiful sea of purple, and as we watch that sea move around the track during the Survivor lap. I will watch and remember that each one of you are unique in your stories, that each one of you has endured the ups and downs that this cancer journey can bring. Each of you has a story to tell, and I am proud and honored to celebrate you tonight. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you so much, Mindi. Very inspirational. Congratulations, Tom. Now I'd like to welcome back to the podium Father Talbot to give the caregiver blessing. Father?
Gosh, thanks.